She doesn't really see you, not the way you hope she does. When her eyes land on you across the room, when she laughs at a joke you barely finished, when she leans in just a little too close, it feels like recognition. Like someone has finally noticed the man you've been waiting to become. But look a little closer. That light in her eyes isn't recognition. It's projection. It's not you she's drawn to. It's the possibility she thinks she's discovered. Every gesture, every story you tell, every hint of ambition you drop becomes raw material for her imagination. In her mind, she isn't dating you. She's casting you. You're not a partner. You're a role. And the script has already been written without your consent. At first, it feels intoxicating. You feel elevated, chosen, special, as if she sees something in you that no one else has. But what she sees is an outline, not a man, a sketch, not a portrait, a fantasy she intends to fill in with her own colors. And here's the cruel twist. The more you try to live up to that image, the less she's able to see you, because reality can never compete with imagination. That's why you felt it before. The slow shift from fascination to disappointment. The confusion when you haven't changed, but her eyes have. It's not that you failed. It's that you never were the person she fell for in the first place. You were a mirror. You were a canvas. You were potential. 2.5 millennia before dating apps, Instagram filters, or the endless self-improvement grind, a man in ancient Athens noticed something about human beings that still governs your love life today. His name was Plato, and he taught in an olive grove called the Academy. Plato believed that what we call reality is only a shadow of a deeper truth. He called that deeper truth the ideal forms. According to Plato, everything you touch, taste, or love in the material world is an imperfect copy of a perfect idea. There isn't just one beautiful woman, one good man, one act of courage. There is a timeless, invisible form of beauty, a form of goodness, a form of courage. Every beautiful face, every kind gesture you see down here is a faint reflection of that eternal pattern. You never actually meet the pure form, you only meet its copies. This may sound abstract, but you've lived it. When you fell for someone you barely knew, when you were intoxicated not by what they were, but by what they represented, you weren't in love with a person, you were in love with a form, a projection, an ideal your own mind summoned out of fragments. And Plato warned, this is why human love feels so unstable. We think we're connecting with another person, but what we're actually touching is a mirror of our own longing for perfection. Women do this too. When she first meets you, she doesn't see your messy room, your bad habits, your contradictions. She sees a reflection of the ideal she carries inside her, the form of the man she hopes exists. She's chasing not you, but an echo of eternity that you happen to resemble. And when reality inevitably shows through the cracks, she feels betrayed, even though you haven't changed. Plato's lesson isn't cynicism, it's clarity. If you don't understand the power of ideals, you'll forever confuse fantasy for love. And if you don't learn to live from your own ideal, your chosen form, you'll always be a character in someone else's story. Plato gave us the language. Modern psychology gives us the evidence. We now know that the human mind is wired to fill in the blanks. When you meet someone attractive, your brain doesn't just register their face. It begins a rapid-fire simulation of who that person might be, how they might behave, how they might make you feel. It's a survival instinct. We project stories onto strangers because we need shortcuts. The problem is that these shortcuts become fantasies, and fantasies become prisons. Women are especially conditioned to do this. From childhood, culture feeds them a constant stream of images of the man, the savior, the romantic hero,
the alpha, the poet warrior. Every movie, every novel, every TikTok teaches them that somewhere out there exists the man who will meet their needs and embody their dreams. By the time they're adults, most women carry around not just preferences, but a full-blown archetype of the ideal partner. Psychologists call it a template. Jung called it the animus. Plato would have called it a shadow of the form. So when she meets you, yes, you, with your own flaws, hopes, and insecurities, she isn't encountering a blank slate. She's encountering you through the lens of that inner archetype. If you match enough of the signals, the template activates. She starts imagining who you could become. She sees potential. She feels excitement, not because she knows you, but because she thinks she's found a living embodiment of her inner story. That's why in the early stages, you feel like a king. She laughs louder at your jokes. She overlooks your mistakes. She tells you she just knows you're different. But that glow isn't pure acceptance, it's projection. It's her unconscious ideal playing across the surface of your life like a film projector on a blank wall. And here's the danger. The more you sense her excitement, the more you start to adjust yourself to fit it. You become more charming, more ambitious, more agreeable, not out of authenticity, but out of fear of losing that light in her eyes. In doing so, you drift further and further from who you actually are. You start living as a role rather than a man. And because no man can permanently outact his own reality, cracks begin to show. You get tired, you slip, you reveal contradictions. Suddenly, the light in her eyes dims. She calls you inconsistent, disappointing, or not the man I thought you were. But you didn't change. You simply failed to sustain the illusion she built and the illusion you helped maintain. This isn't about blaming women. It's about recognizing a pattern in human psychology. We all project. We all fall for our own ideals. But until you understand this mechanism, you'll always mistake her attention for being known, her desire for being understood, and her approval for being loved. The core idea is simple, but uncomfortable. She doesn't fall in love with you. She falls in love with what you represent. And unless you are anchored in your own chosen identity, your own form, you'll spend your life trying to live up to a role that was never yours to play.
Think back to a time you thought you'd finally been seen. Maybe it was a first date, where her eyes locked onto yours and she hung on every word you said. Maybe it was a relationship, where for the first few months, you felt like the best version of yourself. Confident, interesting, even heroic. It was intoxicating, wasn't it? You started waking up earlier, hitting the gym harder, dressing better, dreaming bigger. It felt like her faith in you was fuel. But at night, lying in bed, you sometimes felt a quiet tension. Does she like me, or the idea of me? You caught little clues, the way she told her friends about you, using words you wouldn't use for yourself, the way she'd hint about how you could be even more, or if only you brushed it off because her admiration felt too good to lose. So you tried harder. You shaped yourself to match her image. Fast forward. The admiration begins to cool. The little quirks she once found charming now irritate her. She says, "You're not the man I thought you were," or she simply drifts away. You're left stunned. You replay every moment looking for the mistake. You wonder if you weren't ambitious enough, fun enough, masculine enough. The confusion cuts deep because you didn't fake everything. You showed her your real self. Yet it still feels like you've been rejected for being you. If you're honest, this pattern may have happened more than once. You start to suspect a personal flaw. Maybe I'm just not good at relationships. But deep down, you sense something bigger is at work. Something about how attraction itself operates. You can feel the gap between the person she met and the person you actually are, but you've never had the words for it. That's what this video is giving you, the words and the lens to finally name the pattern, to see that her initial excitement wasn't a scam, but a projection,
to realize that you were cast in a role without knowing the script, and to understand that your job isn't to play that role better. It's to stop living inside other people's ideals altogether. What if the problem isn't that you're not enough, but that you're not anchored? The pattern you've just recognized isn't a personal curse. It's a universal mechanism of the mind. She projects, you perform, the illusion cracks, both of you feel betrayed. That's not love, that's theater. And theater can be thrilling, but it can't sustain intimacy. Plato didn't only talk about illusions, he also talked about climbing out of the cave. The shadows on the wall aren't reality. Reality is stepping into the light and seeing things as they are. In relationships, stepping into the light means this: stop competing for a role in someone else's fantasy and start living from your own chosen ideal. Most men think the way out of this cycle is to become an even better actor, to hit the gym harder, make more money, adopt a more alpha persona, learn a tighter game. That can buy you time, but it doesn't buy you authenticity. The only sustainable solution is to embody your own form. The values, habits, and identity you decide are yours, independent of who's watching. When you do that, something counterintuitive happens. Women who are only chasing potential lose interest quickly, and that's a gift. Women who are genuinely drawn to you begin to show up and stay. This is the shift from being a candidate to being a reality, from chasing her validation to offering your presence, from trying to live up to a projection to inviting someone into your actual life. It's not about rejecting ideals, it's about refusing to be trapped in someone else's. So the revelation is simple but radical. The less you try to be her ideal, the more magnetic you become to the women who actually align with you. And even more importantly, you become someone you can respect, regardless of who is or isn't at your side. Clarity without action is just another theory. Here's how you translate Plato into practice. 1. Name your own ideal. Write down, literally on paper, the values, behaviors, and daily habits that represent the man you choose to be. Not the man you think women want, not the man your parents expect, but the man you respect. This becomes your form. 2. Audit your performances. Notice where you edit yourself to fit into someone else's story. Do you exaggerate your achievements, suppress your opinions, pretend to enjoy things you don't? Each time you catch yourself performing, gently step back into authenticity. 3. Build consistency, not image. Pick 2 or 3 core habits that express your chosen identity. Gym, creative work, self-education, spiritual practice, and do them whether or not anyone is watching. Consistency is what turns ideals into reality. 4. Slow down early stages. When you meet someone new, resist the urge to match her fantasy. Slow the pace. Reveal your real preferences, your boundaries, your actual life. Let her attraction land on who you are, not who you're pretending to be. 5. Watch her response. If she loses interest once you stop performing, that's information, not failure. It means you saved yourself months of playing a role that was never yours. If she stays interested, you're building something real. 6. Circle back to self-respect. Every time you feel rejected or not enough, return to the identity you wrote down. Ask, am I living as that man today? If yes, then her reaction is simply her reality, not your value. Doing these steps won't guarantee every woman stays. They're not meant to. They guarantee you stay in your own life, on your own path. Over time, this authenticity becomes more attractive than any role you could play because it signals strength, clarity, and self-leadership. Imagine this. You walk into a room and you're not scanning faces, wondering who you need to impress. You're already grounded. You know who you are, what you stand for, and what you're building. You're not tense, not performing, not running a silent audition in your head. You're simply present, and paradoxically, that makes you magnetic. When a woman meets you now, she isn't pulled in by an unfinished script she hopes you'll fill. She's drawn to an actual person, living from an actual center. There's no mystery for her to solve or potential to fix. She can either accept who you are or move on, and both outcomes leave you at peace. This is the shift from being a possibility to being a reality, from chasing validation to offering presence, from living inside someone else's projection to inviting someone into your truth. The more you do it, the less you'll fear rejection, because rejection no longer feels like exposure. It simply filters out people who aren't aligned with your path. Something else happens too. Your friendships deepen. Your work feels less like a performance and more like an expression. You stop burning out from trying to maintain an image, and you start investing that energy into growth. In the process, you become the kind of man who doesn't need to tell women he's different. It's obvious. Plato called it turning from the shadows to the light. Modern psychology calls it self-actualization. You might just call it peace. Whatever the label, it's the state where you're no longer trapped in the theater of potential. You stepped onto your own stage in your own story, and you're living it fully. That's the identity shift this video is offering you.
If this message resonates, don't just let it pass. Like this video, not for me, but for yourself. Share it with another man who is still chasing someone else's script, still confusing attention for understanding. And subscribe to Psyche Unmasked. Each video is a step into the shadows you've avoided, a guide to facing the illusions, projections, and ideals that have shaped your relationships without your awareness. This isn't entertainment, this is preparation. Preparation to meet yourself fully and to finally be seen. Not as a possibility, but as a man who exists in his own right. Remember, change doesn't come from fleeting inspiration. It comes from repeated exposure to truth. By subscribing, you're committing to walk that path, even when it's uncomfortable, even when the shadows whisper that you're not enough. You're choosing to step into clarity, one insight at a time. Your presence here matters, not for applause, not for validation, but because the next man who watches this video might finally see the framework he needs to stop being a projection and start being a reality.